Let's take a call just before news, not long out from news. James is in Kyabram in Victoria. Hi, James.
Hey, Neil. Yep, me again. What's the lady's name? I'm sorry.
Wendy. Wendy is our guest.
Excuse me, Wendy. Yes, you probably got some things in your book along this line. For me, that's very big. I read a book, very small book called The Bruises of Satan, and in that it talks about Jesus being yesterday, today, and forever. And many times, even today, just amazingly, God brought up a situation. When I was 17, my mum was riddled with cancer and she was dying, and the last word she ever said to me was, "Oh, God, I hate you." I never got a chance to talk to Mum. I walked away from that with a very low self-esteem, thinking if my own mother couldn't love me, whoever could, you know. But today God took me back to that situation just before and said, I say to my mum, "I know you're riddled with cancer, Mum, but I love you very dearly. And I know that if you were well, you wouldn't say those things because I've always been an obedient and loving son. And I know that that's brought much healing in me today because of what you're sharing. And I know that other people can be helped by those situations by going back, letting Jesus take you back and say the words that were suppressed at the time because of the wounding, because of the trauma, because of the not knowing what to say in a situation where, you know, you were there trying to support your whatever loved one as much as you could. I gave up my career path to take care of my mum with, you know, schooling. But I don't regret any of it. I still love my mum dearly. I'm glad she's in heaven. God understood she was riddled with cancer. She didn't know what she was saying. And orderlies from the church who I've known have said, when people are dying, they strike out at those they love the most. And my mum loved me dearly. She didn't mean what she said. That was the cancer speaking in her. And
James,
I thank God.
I've got to cut in here because we've got to go to news and I won't be able to even get the comment straight away from Wendy. We might hold a thought or two on that. James in Kyabram, thank you so much for great input. It is news time. Our special guest is Wendy Burns. We are talking about Wendy and her life overcoming the masks that she wore based on the trauma of her early teenage years and her childhood. We're back with more after Vision National News. Come back to James that we spoke to just before the news, and I didn't really get an opportunity to hear your insights around James and his comments, but you might remember he was reflecting on his dying mother, dying of cancer, and she was angry with God because of her circumstances. How do you process this thought that before Christ in your life, and you have no concept of this forgiveness, the wounds and the masks, these are all often driven by our own personal anger. Any thoughts here?
Yeah, and that was a big story that James shared with us about his mum, that she, and I'm not quite sure whether he meant she hated God, she hated Christ, or she hated him, whatever that concept was. But when someone is hurting so bad, they will often lash out, and it sounds like his mum did know the Lord, and in that quite often we can be angry because we haven't been healed and we're not at peace with what God is doing in our life, and that's a very difficult situation. But so amazing that James has been able to go back and walk that through with the Lord. And I love that he said that even again today, that he was led through that with the Lord, that he was able to work that through, so that he's got not only been able to forgive his mum, but being able to forgive himself, I guess, in any way that he carried that. But when we're angry, we say things, and words hurt, words matter. And I talk a lot about that in my new book, thinking about self-care and how our thinking matters and how our words matter. The things that we say make a difference. When we speak them out, they make a difference, even our anger to God. But God actually copes with our anger, doesn't he, Neil? He understands our anger.
As James said, and he reflects on his circumstance, he said that was the cancer talking. And I think that lots of us might be able to reflect on different family members. And I know that some of us with aging parents can sometimes reflect on the way that some of our aging parents are moving into times when they don't think the same way they used to. And dementia has a way of twisting things and twisting memories and twisting the way that people respond. And sometimes there's an angry response that comes in people who suffer dementia. So oftentimes it's not the real person talking. And yet somehow or other, introducing forgiveness into those circumstances is going to be something of a key that unlocks something beautiful rather than dealing with all of the ugliness. I mean, beauty and ugly, I mean, that's probably two ways of talking about one side of forgiveness and the other.
That's right. Yeah. And it takes courage, doesn't it, to unlock that? It takes incredible courage on that behalf of the person that is doing the forgiving.